Hi folks, this is a quick overview of feedHopper. We just wanted to give a quick tutorial in video form to cover the basic areas. It is a sophisticated application and has a lot of options that most people do not explore, and I think this will help you get more out of your application. To the left here you have your feeds. In portrait style this would be represented under a pop-up. In landscape, when not in widescreen reading mode, you can get to it like this. You would enter folders thusly. You can assign feeds to multiple folders. These are the unread indicators. Green there would indicate new content. You can personalize the icons down here. And such as this one, you can see we pulled the logo from the site directly. There's just a button to do that. Or we have dozens and dozens of hand-painted icons that look really good and they're high-res. These are high-level feed options that are work on your database of articles that have been downloaded across your entries. So you want to see all unread articles, you can visit there. There is a row of buttons here that are the top level features of feedHopper. They act on folders when you're inside a folder, or they act at the global level. When you're in a folder, the items you cannot manipulate are removed. I'm going to use this gear to bring up the main settings page and just discuss each option here. We have a lot of social accounts that you can register. The most exciting is OpenFaint, where you can actually push an article that you like to your friends, and it will result in a push notification on your friend's feedHopper on their iPad, and they can read the article, and if they like it and they haven't yet subscribed to the feed that article came from, they can do that. If you have Google account, you can establish it here, and we will sync the feeds that you have with your account with Google Reader. Some basic display options. If you have a low internet connection, you can turn off thumbnails. That will speed things up a little bit. feedHopper will peruse the article and attempt to download imagery to create the thumbnails for feeds that don't natively indicate that in the RSS content. You can enable parental controls, and that's also useful. You can, if you have enabled parental controls, you can actually lock out individual feeds under the feed settings, which we'll get to in a moment. You can export your feed settings as an OPML file. You can export just a friendly human readable list, or directly to your Google Reader account if you've established that. We simplify export and import to remove options that are duplicated. So if you're exporting, you don't need to export items that are already present in your Google Reader account, and vice versa. When you import, regardless of how you import, we'll remove import options you already have to simplify what you're looking at. Wizards are cool. They're a way to configure all of your feeds at once through some type of criteria. In this case, if you use a lot of user and password accounts for multiple feeds to access the same server or the same service, you can batch change your accounts. Here you can customize your reading mode preferences and batch change them across all of your feeds. We'll be adding more wizards as time permits. The locker button here is what you use to get in and out of customizing either a folder if you're in a folder or the main list. Here you can organize, you can move things around the way you like them, you can delete, and you can edit. So when you touch a feed, you're able to bring up all kinds of options here. You can, under settings, change the title, you can change the type, modify the URL, extend the database size. feedHopper is a database-centric application. We archive articles. You specify how deep how much memory you want in terms of article count. And what happens is when that is exceeded, we just delete the oldest articles. So you have a moving window. You don't have to manage and manually delete anything. If you ever want any help, you can press this little I button up there. You can personalize the icon. In this case, for Engadget, we've downloaded their article site icon. Or you can pick some of our hand-painted icons, which are high-res and look great. You can assign this feed to one or more categories, which are folders in practice. But so you could have a tech blog, for example, belong to two folders you call news and technology, if you wish. You can customize the RSS content. I recommend you always turn on download full article and reading mode. Those are great. Download full article will ignore the RSS content that came in the RSS file itself and go directly to the original article and grab the entire web page and embed it in feedHopper minus the graphics for scalability reasons. Reading mode we'll get into later in another tutorial, but it's a really powerful feature. And then we move on to podcasts. You can enable a podcast account if required, and under Advanced you can pin lock this feed. You can enable URL authentication to access the feed, which can be different than a podcast. You can actually have authenticated RSS feeds with different podcast account, and we support all those options. Post account option is an ability to auto log in to a blog or forum where feeds are not public unless you subscribe as a member. This text string you can place here is the equivalent of what happens when you hit the login button. This will automatically log you in whenever you refresh from that feed. feedHopper will log you in, allowing the feed to be read and the new articles to be archived into feedHopper. A lot of feeds don't work with Google Reader, and so you have the option to turn Google Sync off for an individual feed that's causing issues. For feedHopper, Google Reader is an option. You can completely be divorced from Google Reader or completely be on board with Google Reader and anywhere in between. So we have a lot of users that use our podcast and URL authentication and post account options and disable those accounts with Google Sync because Google particularly doesn't like that type of feed. You can use this help button here to get in touch with us directly with email support. I recommend the forums so you can visit folks who may have already posted with a problem or a question that you have. Also, you can share your question or concern that others can read. Tell a friend. We'd love it if you'd recommend feedHopper to others. So if you do that option, it will present you an email with the iTunes link. These two buttons down here are quickies for marking your entire database as read, and shuffling. Shuffling is a new feature we've introduced, which if you look at the content up here, we can organize it based on some criteria. And that criteria allows people with very large lists here to pop new content up to the top. So you can quickly just bring up to the top stuff you really want and not worry so much about manually ordering your feeds. When you visit an article, just touch it. Here is the list of articles in the feed, and we have the nice pretty preview icons with time and article title. You can search, which is a pervasive feature in feedHopper. You can empty all feeds. You can swipe to delete an individual article. Excuse me, I meant empty all articles. You can mark the entire feed as being read. You can refresh just this feed and it will check for new articles. Or you can use this interesting map pin option we've added in a couple of versions ago, which will take you immediately to the last unread article that you had on this feed. And that's a great thing. It's the same thing as finding that last article that you had and selecting it. These indicators mean unread. So I'm reading an article here. And you can follow along in this panel. This is the toolbar when you have an article, and I can use these handy dandy guys to walk the article list. If you had Google Sync enabled, you would have these traditional Google icons here for marking this article as a favorite or sharing it or liking it. As you read articles, your account in Google is updated as having been read. And when you refresh a feed that is synced with Google, if you have read it from another device, we will instantly mark it as having also been read, even though you didn't read it in feedHopper. You can print an article, something we introduced in the last a couple of versions ago. You can visit the original article link, You can engage socially, which includes that great open faint push feature called Recommend. You can tweet or bookmark with some bookmarking services or email. And with the locker, you can modify your database by bookmarking this article or archiving it. If you click on a link in the article, or you click on the link here, you'll be taken to the web page where you can interact directly in feedHopper. This here is a nice feature called widescreen, and if you touch that, you have a much more focused view of the article. You can still get to this list thusly, including all of the buttons you can get to down here, and we can back all the way out thusly, and just to show you what a folder would look like in this case. Here's a nice article from a Lego Fanatic site, and you can still access the search area, and you go back to your folder, and then you can go back to the main. We'll be producing a few more of these. We'll go into more detail later. Let me wrap up with just saying here is the main refresh button up there. It will refresh all articles, all feeds. Now if you press this refresh button, it will only refresh the folder, and if we're in a feed, this refresh button will only refresh the feed. So you have a lot of granularity with how much you're going to download at any one time. Thanks for listening.